how mind control really works and how to use it to your advantage. So I've spent the last 5 years studying human psychology in the context of sales and marketing, and I've made millions of my clients doing so. Here's just a few of the screenshots. But recently, I learned how politicians manipulate voters, and the techniques they use are even better than some of the best marketers use on you every single day, right? Call it influence, call it persuasion, call it manipulation. It's all forms of mind control. And once you see how it works, I promise you, you can't unsee it. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not as free thinking as you believe. In this video, I'm going to break down the psychology behind why you're manipulated, how to use these same techniques to sell more, influence more, and how to control the narrative around you. Now, some of you might feel angry or offended by what I'm about to share in the video, but I ask you to approach it with an open mind. And if you agree to that, the information here can set you free or at least give you a new perspective. By the end of this video, you're going to learn exactly how perception gets shaped and formed by others, the reasons behind the majority of wars and all conflicts, right? And what really controls our and your decision. I'm going to share with you exactly how to use this specifically for your business to sell more. And I'm even going to show you the real life examples of applying this into marketing and sales. Here's the foundation, the prison for your identity. So I got a lot of these insights from a book I was reading by David Icke called The Roadmap. And it's one of the best books I've ever read. The biggest insight I got from this book is how perception shapes our reality, your reality. So human beings are highly programmed biologically and through our lived experience. And our perspectives are largely based on the identity that we have formed, right? So once you identify with external labels and not the spirit, whether that be religious beliefs, your political ideology, your race, your tribe, your nationality, your social class, or your profession, and see that as the core of who you are, then your perception is unlimited, almost literally locked in a mental prison. This is exactly how it works, right? So identity is the deepest levels of change, and then your beliefs then follow your identity, and then your thoughts and beliefs then action. So we are all decoding waveform information, right? Everything that you see around you is waveform information. The waves of potential is waves of information. Just the same thing as Wi-Fi. Can't see Wi-Fi, but it's information getting carried through waves. Now, what happens is that your five senses, they collect information, right? Them themselves, they don't form an opinion on the information. They only collect information. So your brain connects, it's basically encased in darkness. Bill Costas talks about this all the time, right? So in case of darkness, your brain doesn't know anything but it has friends, your senses, your touch, taste, hearing, smell, vision, that collect data, collect information. And now what happens is then that information is then decoded through your label, right? Your labels, your identity. And that's how your brain interprets and makes form of that information, right? It takes the information from the five senses and then decodes it through your identity, through your label, which is basically the lens of which you interpret information and give it meaning, right? And then you project your version of reality, right? And then based off that, your behavior funnels. So when you have labels, right, and you see things through your particular label, it collapses how much you can see or what you even allow yourself to see, right? You're only supposed to see a certain amount of information when there's so much more. Right? Now it becomes your experience, right? So once you see your label, whether that be your religious beliefs, I'm a Muslim, you're a Christian, race, white, black, right? The nationality, your perceptions then become locked, right? Your brain starts thinking, it actually starts pattern matching. You don't evaluate information properly, you just filter it through your identity, right? You won't look at information that completely counters what you believe, right? Or you look for reasons to discredit it, because that would then be an attack on your identity, right? Think about it. What's the first thing that someone says when you challenge their political or religious views, right? Get defensive, dismissive, angry, even if your point is valid. Now, that's because you're challenging their view feels like an attack on who they are because they form identity into this label, right? So once you show me the labels that you identify with, I will know the thoughts, actually your thoughts and your beliefs. So then I could then predict your behavior and how you'll respond in most situations, right? So when people filter things through their labels or through their identity, behavior becomes predictable, right? And this is the trap. This is what we call the matrix. Your responses almost become programmed, right? So it becomes so predictable what you're going to do next, right? And that's what the matrix is. Us is basically seeing everything through our whole reality is just encoded information, and then you break it down into your particular label, and then you basically create your own world that's only really actually exists in your mind. There's actually your version of it. Then showing you how people are using this to manipulate you all the time, because politicians, they know this thing to a T, and one of the main ways they expose people to mind control them is supporting them, right? they're some of the best marketers on the planet. And by far, some of the ones that spend the most money on getting their marketing messages, which is just basically propaganda out there, right? People fall for it every single election, right? The cost of the US election and in the 2024 presidential race, over $5 billion was spent. Do you think these people are spending money guessing what works or knowing what works to influence? Mo, what is a black vote? If people who don't identify with those labels respond in a similar way, right? So they'll say a few words in a campaign, mostly nice. They'll appeal to Christian, and they instantly unlock the access or support of millions of people who identify with that label, right? Yeah, Biden, throwing in after the black vote, who went on Breakfast Club and said, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. Someone that's responsible for millions of African Americans, right, in prison through his campaigning for the free title, right? So the thing is, they know people don't think much when they decode information through their existing beliefs and thoughts, which are generated from the labels that they identify with, right? So this is what leads to automatic programmed responses. These guys aren't even persuading, they're triggering. What is getting triggered if there's not an automatic response that comes from it? That's literally the whole essence of triggered. When you say someone that gets triggered, right, they instantly got angry about something, right? It's an automatic response based on the thing that you did, right? Almost like pressing buttons on a computer game, which is what these guys, this is what they bet money on, right? So people think and make decisions based on their identity, beliefs, and perception, rather than researching or merit, right? This is how the political or popularity contest, right? On who says the right thing. Right? It doesn't take a rocket science to know these people are lying through their teeth, and that's what they do, right? Yeah, people fall for it every 4 years. Show you some other application, right? How did the Europeans easily colonize the majority of the planet, right? Well, one of the ways they did this, especially in Africa, is they use labels and play them against each other. This is how they do divide and conquer, because they see themselves as separate. In Africa, people separate themselves into different ethnic tribes, which often didn't know much about each other or didn't even speak the same language. So what did the Europeans do? They came in, stirred conflict between the tribes. They ended up fighting each other. They were united, a force that was pulling the strings with Europeans, right? It's really easy for them to take over their land easily. They did this in India, right? It's a large reason why India and Pakistan are separated. Still that conflict to this day. They played these religious beliefs against each other. Hindu against Muslims this time, right? Okay. And the conflict still goes on till this day. They're fighting each other. European settlers made it common. One of the main ways that they did this, because if everybody reunited to fight against them, then they'll have a hard time at doing that, right? So, why am I telling you this, right? Same psychology applies to it. I market. Well, first, you need to understand the common different categories of label, right? People label themselves in many different ways, and a combination of what, right? So here, there's just the common category. So you have demographics, age, race, gender, right? You have geographic, nationality, region that they're in, the city, global, even globalism, right? People label themselves by their occupation, right? I'm a scientist, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, right? So their vocation, their academic, or social economic as well, right? So occupation and people, work class, right? You have affluent people. These are all different labels as well. You have health, you have, relation and social roles as well, right? I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a daughter, right? You can have your beliefs, whether that's religion, political, your philosophical or ethical beliefs as well, like with veganism, etc. Right? You have your interests, your hobbies, lifestyle, and then even your emotional states as well, right? Angry, sad, calm, right? But what is in the middle of all of this? It's I am, right? I am is who you and I are at our core. Before you even label yourself as anything else, have the thought, I am. That is who you are at the core. It's spirit, it's being, it's infinity, all possibility, it's potential, right? Nothing else needs to come after it. People recognize their true self as I am. You recognize the divinity every so one else. I am. Everyone else, different expression of the same thing at their core. Now, everything else is really a false identity. But those people, and once people see themselves not as I am, but as a, socioeconomic standard, right? I'm working class. What that does is collapse your potential into one reality, right? See yourself as external label of this 3D world, because I am is one dimensional. It is the core. It is essence, right? Is who you are at the actual core, right? So you can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't touch it, but is the thing that all things come from, right? But once you see yourself as dimensional world, whether that's be your religious beliefs, whether that be your socioeconomic status, whether that be the region that you're in, right? Whether that be any beliefs that you hold, right? You collapse that into your reality, and then your reality becomes limited, right? Identifying with anything else apart from I am is identifying with limitation, right? Because what that does is it locks a perception into that mental prison of that label. You believe as a label is expected to believe. You think how the label wants you to think, and you behave as a label is expected to behave, right? This is what forms the foundation of my control, because if I can control the labels that I identify with, I will then know what you believe, I will then know what you think, and then I will then know exactly how you behave. This is how people also get dumber. Can't see things from all angles. They can only see things from their angle and their own perspective. So you can't evaluate information holistically, right? And this is what people bet on. Okay? So now, this is the applications to sales and marketing. So you can exploit labels by projecting them onto people or hijacking people's existing labels that they identify with to influence people to believe or do what they want, what you want them to do, right? Because people, they want to be consistent with their identity, right? So commitment, consistency, bias, right? If you ever, the 6 Weapons of Influence by Robert Cialdini talks about this, right? Due to evolutionary psychology, because back our ancestors, food and everything was scarce. So humans bias towards conserving energy. Thinking requires energy, right? Now, we don't want to do that for the most part. We want to conserve energy. So one of the shortcuts we make to conserve energy is to have shortcuts to actually help us make decisions, right? Because you have to think about every single decision. It takes a lot of mental energy. So one of the main shortcuts we have for decision making is our identity and our beliefs. Basically, your labels, right? It's the shortcuts we make for the decision making. And once you know this, hijack this to your perspective, to your advantage, right? Cool. So how do you apply this, man? Let me give you an example, right? So first you have your ideal prospects, right? You need to know how your ideal customer identifies themselves, how they label themselves, right? Which is all of this, right? What out of this, how do they label themselves, right? How do they come labels? To know that, okay? Now, what thoughts and beliefs are associated with that label? You need to know that, okay? And who ideally do they want to be? They are their existing identity, their existing label. Now, what is their ideal label? How do they really want to see themselves, right? And then you have yourself. How do you want yourself and your business to be perceived? What thoughts and beliefs do you want people to have about you, your business, and the opportunity that you're selling it on, right? And what content and messages are aligned with that? So what I do once you understand this, is come up with content that speaks first to your ideal prospect, aligns with the labels that they identify with, right? Okay, and the thoughts and beliefs that follow that. Then you want to embed the messages of how you want to be perceived, thoughts and beliefs that you want to have into the behavior, ideally, that you want of them buy your product and services. Right? This is how you use this to your advantage. If it's going to happen anyway, right, at least take control of this consciously so it actually happens in your favor. But let me give you an example, right, with marketing. So there's this person over here. He's a real estate tax strategist. His ideal customer of real estate investors. Now, how do real estate investors identify themselves? A lot of them identify themselves by their occupation, right? So, you know, what is the occupation, right? So what they do, for example, right? So are they wholesalers, fix and flippers, BRR investors? They might identify themselves by the asset class that they invested, whether that's residential, family, commercial, you know, short-term rentals, okay? And what thoughts and beliefs that they have, right? So I'm the driver, not the passenger, right? So a lot of real estate investors, they prefer real estate over stocks or crypto because they feel like they have more control, right? They leverage good debt versus bad debt, right? They believe that this real estate is the best asset class. And their identity, they want to be like the bank, right? They want to be like the bank where they just dish the assets, right? They want to be economically bulletproof, right? They know real estate is very consistent. They want to be economically bulletproof. So no matter what happens in the economy, they're safe, they're fine. And they want to be basically a portfolio manager, right? So let's give you some examples of how this works. What she's done is utilize, exploit this label to target these people, to get attention from these people, right? So let me give you an example over here. Cool. So the one way you can do this is use this for your ad campaign, right? So if you go here, let me just play this ad.
Do you invest in short-term rentals? Most people think that the IRS is it. Do you invest in short-term rentals?
You invest in short-term rental, right? Obviously, when you're advertising, you're not going to know the person's name, but what are their other names? What are the other names, right? What are their other names? And what you want to know by their other names is what are their other labels that they identify themselves. If you call someone by name, like if anyone says, Ayo, I'm going to turn my head and look, you're going to instantly have my attention, right? Just like that, right? Now, you can do the same thing by calling out the labels that they identify with. Hey, if you invest in short-term rentals, if I'm someone who invests in short-term rentals, best believe you got my attack, right?
Do you invest in short-term rentals?
And that's one application in just ads that people do all the time, right? Thoughts and beliefs. Then here's another campaign that he did that identifies and speaks to people's thoughts and beliefs, right? Another version of that.
I invest in real estate because not only because of the tax benefits, of course, are great, but also the consistency that the real estate market performs, because it's almost like solving for a math problem. Like if I know what this area does in rent, and I know the expenses, I know what my insurance is going to be, and I know all that, like I can plug into what I should pay for that property. Or the same thing goes as, hey, I know if I want to achieve a net worth of this much $1 million at a certain appreciation percentage in my real estate portfolio, like I can achieve that. And to me, it's just a math equation, and you're solving for this variable that really is your personal time and your personal like self-worth. Because a lot of people identify their worth because self-worth is how much their net worth is. I like identifying my self-worth like how much time I can spend with people that I love. And so it's like literally solving for an equation of, okay, in 20 years, I want to have this much net worth, I want to make this much money with this much time. And real estate allows that vehicle to happen where you're getting appreciation, you're getting tax benefits, you're getting equity pay down, and you're getting consistent rent across the board. Maybe your portfolio, you have long-term rentals, short-term rentals, commercial, and you're diversified that way. But I think out of any vehicle that wealthy people own, you'll see common denominators that they all own real estate.
Boom, right? He's then spoken to people's beliefs of them believing that is the best asset class, right? Well, unless they believe this, right? They tapped into the beliefs of I'm the driver, not a passenger, right? Because they want control. But speak to that ideal identity of them being a bank, right? Being economically bulletproof. Spending time with the people that they love, right? So, boom. That's how he's speaking out to his ideal audience. Now, how does he get his audience to perceive him and label him in the way that he wants to be perceived, right? Which is, okay, what labels do you want to have, right? Well, how does he want him and his label and his business to be perceived? Well, he wants to be perceived as an expert, as an authority, highly skilled, connected, right? So how does he do that through his marketing campaigns, right? So let me give you an example. But here's an ad that he ran. And what this ad is going to is everyone who's taken action on button.
If you have a negative taxable income, let's say it's negative 30,000, you can convert the first 30K of your 401k to Raw completely tax-free. Some of that is going to be at 10%, and some of that's going to be at 12%, up to 88,000. The 400K that you have in your 401k, it's going to get taxed eventually. Whether you pay when you retire or you pass it on to your kids and they inherit it, they pay the taxes, somebody's going to pay taxes one day. So it's not a matter of if but when. For me, I would go ahead and say, I'm going to pay the taxes on this thing now while it's only 400K. So then that way that money earns and grows tax-free for the rest of your life, for the rest of your beneficiary's life, and it just saves you a ton of money over time. If you have a negative taxable income, let's say it's negative 30,000, you can convert the first 30K.
So why does he put this marketing message out, right? Because you can see there's no ad on this. It's not telling people to take action. It's just distributing content. Because this content, giving information that displays his expertise, right? He showed himself to be an expert, right? Another one.
They say Warren Buffett pays less in taxes than his secretary. It's not that he's actually paying less in taxes dollar for dollar. When you look at the income that he's making across all of his portfolio companies as an investor, compare that to the taxes that he's actually paying, he has a lower effective tax rate than his secretary who, let's just say they're working at W2 and they're paying 20-25% income. The IRS has like a taxpayer bill of rights. It's out there for people to understand. They read it. So the thing that they don't want to know is that they tax earnings, they tax work. They don't tax investors as much. If you want to escape the rat race, you got to learn how to shift that income from active to passive or active to portfolio as an investor as quick as possible to save money taxes.
Another content that displays activities that shows him as an authority, right? How does he show he's trustworthy, right? What how does he get his partners to believe and trust that he is a trustworthy person, right? Here's another content that's distributed to everybody who's booked a call with him.
It's been kind of interesting being a client of yours and just making the transition, right? I think when we first talked, I was coming from, making the transition from W2 to being short-term rentals full time, and then we spoke earlier, now it's
a client interview, testimonial from his client, right? How does he get people to believe that they need this tax strategy right now? Because he wants people to take action and buy his services right now.
I already have a CPA. Why would I need a new one? We hear this all the time with prospective clients. And what we've identified over the last 4 or 5 years with thousands of clients is people do CPA for one of the reasons. Number one is because they got hit with a large tax bill that wasn't expected. The CPA, I go 15, like, yeah, you owe 50 grand. And that leads to problems. It could lead to lending issues. It could lead to not getting a house or a mortgage. So no good, right? One, the second reason is lack of communication. So they don't hear from the CPA all throughout the year. It takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
So he's answering all these objections up front, right? He's got all this content that's pre-framing people, and like, having his messages out that's influenced. But tax right now, right? Specialized tax strategies for real estate as well, right? So, or they have those thoughts and beliefs. It increases the probabilities that the people are better to go onto their sales call with him or someone on his team, and they're going to buy, right? How you want to influence people's, why you want to influence people's thoughts and beliefs, and what turns out with the tax strategies, it shows that with why you even need a tax strategist right now. Embedding these messages as content to people. I could do the same thing with sales, right? So in sales, for example, let's say I understand someone's label, right? That they're a family man. They see themselves as a family man. They see themselves as ambitious. They see themselves as adventurous, right? And their thoughts and beliefs is that they know having one source of income isn't stable. Still, right? Men, universal belief around men is that they provide on their family, right? Okay, they believe that they'll be more attractive with money, right? So the ideal identity of someone like that who wants to be a provider, right? Who wants to be seen as smart and intelligent, not just to the world, but to himself as well. Wants to be seen as affluent. Now, yeah, sales school with me. I've read knowing this, right? I will also know how I want to be perceived in their acts, right? I want to be perceived as an expert, as authority, as highly skilled and connected, right? Okay. And how would I do that? Let's say I'm on a sales call, I would have a presentation that goes through me and my background and my results. And I do this anyway, right? So I'll show them, right? I have a whole presentation that shows a bit of my backstory, right? And the clients and the results that we've done for customers in the past, right? For example. So let's say I'm selling a business opportunity, right? Okay. So I have a presentation that goes through you or the business or the opportunity on the results that you got people in the past at the start of the call, because that then positions you as an expert, as highly skilled, etc. You set the right frame to go in for the rest of the call. Now, I want them to believe that I'm trustworthy, that this opportunity is the best way to achieve their goal, that you're working with a reputable company. I can do that by having a strong, again, in a presentation that really positions as an authority and your business as an authority as well, right? Now, what messages can I say to influence this person to take action, right? Well, I can give them a label, which they like and they will aspire to be. So I can say, hey, I know you're someone who invests in themselves because you took the time to show up for this call, right? Don't reject that. Especially if you see me as an expert, and this is an identity that aligns with them buying my products or service. I've given them that identity by placing it on them, right? They need to accept it for it to have an influence, right? But who doesn't want to be seen as someone who invests into themselves or get better, right? And I'm using what they just did, the example of what they just did, or them just simply showing up for the call as evidence to back that. Obviously, I could say it's like a question, a calibrated question, one that leads them to the thoughts and beliefs that aligns with buying your products or service. I could say, okay, what would the extra income from this business opportunity allow you to do for your family? If they see themselves as a family man, they're going to start thinking about all the things that they can do for their family. It aligns with the label that they already have, right? And then I'm future pacing them into thinking into a future reality where they have more abundance. That ideal identity provide more for their family, with tapping in on that ideal identity of being a provider, right? You see how this works, right? Okay. I also say this opportunity will allow you to travel the world and have those new experiences that you really want, because you're going to be making money after. There's someone that's adventurous and told me about their dreams and aspirations to travel. This aligns with that label. All you're doing, you have the same presentation, but all you're doing is sales. They're finding out what people want, what their goals and beliefs, right? And framing your mechanism, what you have to offer, as a vehicle to get what they want. They don't care about the business opportunity itself. They care what it's going to do for them, right? And what is it going to do for them is going to help them achieve their ideal identity, going to help them achieve desire, which comes from the labels that they have. There's also beliefs coming from those labels and their ideal identity, and showing them a way to achieve this, the ideal identity, and be consistent with this label. Do you get it? Right? So, one key note, the perspective that you have on someone also influences their behavior. And people act accordingly to how you expect them to behave as well. This is why you're shooting yourself in the foot if you have a negative perception of someone else, because that is what you collapse into reality that you experience of them. So I had this person on my team, who sales manager. He had a negative view of the people that he was speaking with. He saw them as dumb, as unintelligent. Now, that's exactly what he experienced, because his perception also influenced their behavior. And this person barely wasn't getting any sales, and people just didn't like him. So feedback for people who didn't like him, because even though he didn't say it out loud, because you thought that way, that is the exact thing that you experienced from that person, right? So your expectations of someone also has a powerful effect. This is how people can behave completely different with one person and another person, right? And it's also influenced on the type of relationship, right? How you behave with your partner, your girlfriend, might be completely different to, especially with the guys, right? Completely different to how you behave with your boys, and that's also different to how you behave with your parents, right? Because their expectation of how you are has a massive influence on you. Therefore, your behavior. Okay? Now, this is how influence works, right? So you have usually no authority there, right? The people that you label as trustworthy, as high status, or the people that you have the perspective, I give them the label of having authority, right? They have the ability to change or enforce your labels, thoughts, and beliefs, which in turn changes your behavior, right? So this is how you give your power to authority, right? So think about parents, politicians, celebrities, teachers, doctors, friends, right? Your parents have a massive influence. Parents have a massive influence on their children, especially when growing up, right? Because they believe everything you say. They see you as an adult, as a caregiver. So in turn, you have a massive influence on how they perceive themselves, right? Think about a celebrity. Someone gets on call. A celebrity selling a biz up. and he's getting on call with someone who's a fan, I don't think they're going to have some ridiculous amount of close rates, right? Because what they expect on you has a lot more powerful effect. And this also goes for people that you find trustworthy. So with the opinions of your friends and family, they also have a massive effect on you. The people that you trust is the people that you respect, right? So they have a massive impact on how you see yourself, right? Labels, right? And your thoughts and beliefs that follow that. Okay? That's how influence works, really. And this is how politicians are able to have so much influence over people, right? And why they go out and try and find celebrities to endorse their program, because they know celebrities have a massive amount of influence. Why do celebrities have a massive amount of influence? Because people see them as higher status. People almost pedestalize them, right? They almost idolize a lot of celebrities. So whatever they say, you're going to shortcut into making a decision, because these people, they're in turn, because you see them as high status, they have a massive influence over labels, how you see yourself, right? And your thoughts and beliefs around a particular subject, because hold the person in such high esteem, right? Label that you give it them. How we give our power to authority all the time. Right? But mind control. Able to drop, like, take them off people because they identify with their label, so opposed to them. Right? The more that you identify with I am, the more back power. Right? That has so much power because it's infinite potential. I am can be anything that you want it to be. Now, labels aren't necessarily a bad thing if you are choosing them intentionally, because the core problem is people don't choose their label, right? It's influence and programmed into them from a very young age. So because your family is Muslim, you're Muslim. Because your family is Christian, you become a Christian. Because your family believes are Democrats in their political belief, you're a Democrat. See how this goes, right? Okay. The more you identify with all of these external labels, but it collapses your perspective into seeing things in only one way. So you behave in only one way. This one leads to program responses. So if you want to that embodies wonder, you need to be able to let go or drop all of that and identify with spirit. You see yourself as human. Or you see yourself as human, race, like right? You see that as who you are at your core and not your spirit, right? Why so many people are at odds all the time, right? Divide and conquer because you see someone that's completely different to you. When your core, what we are, our core is I am. And if you recognize that, then you can see the divinity in other people, and you can see how other people are just different expression of the same thing. I am. So that concludes this video. So now you've learned how mind control reads, how to use it to your advantage, and how to break free from the influence of to your advantage, because unfortunately, this is how most people see themselves. They see themselves through their labels. So it has a big advantage if you're a marketer or someone inside product, because you can influence so easily, especially if you have a product or service that you're selling online. You can control almost every single piece of information that people are exposed to about you, your business, your service, so that because you can control that information, you can control the narrative and completely build your own perception of how people perceive you and your business. You have a massive amount of power to do that, especially in this online world. So that is up to you. Below, thoughts, opinion about this video, what insights you gained from it, right? If you disagree, if you agree, I want to know the more. Yeah, share that with me. Like, comment, subscribe if you find this video helpful. Education or service-based business, and you want to learn more about how to use strategies and other strategies to sell more of your products and services, then click the link below for a link to get a free consultation where I break down and go into your business and show you all the strategies ways for our clients to help them generate millions of dollars, and how you can apply it into your own business as well. Apply all these strategies to your own, sell more products, services. I went for a lot of information here, definitely fun, but the point of this channel is tied into marketing to sell more. To this video in its entirety, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.